to the second installment of building a more profitable business. Today we're going to talk a little bit about time and money management. All right? So let's jump into this. Again, a little bit about my story, my background, if this is your first time joining us. I was a landscape designer, had a landscape company. We did design and then installed I managed the installs of the different designs that I did. And loved what I was doing. I was in that business for about 15 years. And I just was so frustrated because I couldn't understand my money and didn't know what was going on with my money. And, you know, it ended up biting me in the tail because I ended up in bankruptcy. And a couple months after declaring bankruptcy, I went in to meet with my accountant to get my taxes filed. And my accountant, as I was talking to him there, finally said to me, yeah, I'd seen that coming for quite a while now. And I was just floored. I couldn't believe that he had seen this coming for quite a while and hadn't said anything to me about it. So it was right at that time I decided that my new calling in life was to be a trusted advisor for the construction industry. So I made a transition into the accounting industry, and now that's what I do. I help construction companies with their finances, with their cash flow, with their accounting in general. And so that's a little bit about me and where I come from. So let's go ahead and move on. Just wanted to review super quick from the previous session. We have the balance sheet. We have the assets minus liabilities equals equity. That was the formula that we work with on the balance sheet. Assets are what you own. It's like the body, the chassis, the exterior of the vehicle. Liabilities are what you owe, which is like the features inside the vehicle. And then equity is the value of the company to the owners. And that's like the engine of the company. So the profit and loss, we talked a little bit about that. The equation for the profit and loss is income minus expenses equals profit. And then we have the income, which is the revenue of the company. We compared that to the acceleration on a vehicle. The cost of goods sold is the cost to produce the goods and services. We compared that to the RPMs on a vehicle. And the expenses, the cost of goods sold and all other purchases the company makes. We talked about that as being the braking of the vehicle. All right, statement of cash flows. We compared that to the gas gauge in your vehicle. Cash is the gas of your company. Without cash, you go nowhere. Cash is affected by the profit and loss accounts and by a couple of balance sheet accounts. We talked a little bit about that. Cash flow, as I said, is like the gas gauge on a vehicle. So there's a quick review from our previous session. We'll jump in now. All right, to an important question. Do you pay yourself what you want to be making? If not, why? I ask this of all my different customers because it's important for me to understand how you feel about your business. Ultimately, you went into business for a specific reason. It was probably because you were really good at swinging the hammer, not because you wanted to do accounting. But the point is, you probably had a certain expectation when you came into the company. Is that expectation being met? Are you making what you want to be making? So, We're going to talk about Parkinson's Law. Here's a quick comic strip. The gentleman here is saying, hey, so how's that big server update coming along? And the other gentleman says, not started yet. No rush. And the other guy freaks out. Yes, rush. It absolutely must be done by next month, and it's supposed to take at least 3 weeks to complete. And then the other guy says, nah, don't worry. You got to factor in how everything somehow always gets done faster on the last day before the deadline. So this is Parkinson's Law, illustrated in a comic strip. So Parkinson's Law says that the demand upon a resource tends to expand to match the supply of the resource. And this applies to both time and money. And Parkinson's Law, frankly, kills businesses. So basically what this means is that if you have a resource, say time or money, and you have a certain amount of it, you are going to spend all of that time or money right up until the very last bit. There's rarely anything saved over. That's not in our nature. It's just natural to spend all of that. So if you're given a week deadline, you're going to spend the full week, most likely. If you're given $100, you're going to spend that full $100, most likely. You're not going to save any of it back. Okay? And this is kind of the foundation of cash and time management and what we're talking about today. Let's start with time management. So another important question here, are you a business owner or a firefighter? Because a lot of my clients I know are firefighters. They don't plan ahead and stay on top of things and get ahead. Instead, they wait until little things pop up. Oh, this needs some money. Boom, pay the money. Oh, this needs some of your time. Boom, spend the time. It's not planning ahead and getting things done ahead of time. They tend to instead put out fires and survive that way. So if we look here at time management, here's a great quote from Michael Gerber. Michael Gerber is the author of The E-Myth, which is a fantastic book that talks about some of the different problems that entrepreneurs have because they know that they're really good at swinging the hammer, and so they decide to start their own business. And they don't really consider all the different hats that you have to wear as an entrepreneur. So Michael Gerber says, most entrepreneurs are merely technicians with an entrepreneurial seizure. Most entrepreneurs fail because you're working in your business rather than on your business. And that's exactly what we're talking about today with time management and money management. That you kind of become a slave to your company, or as we mentioned a second ago, a firefighter. Because something always requires your time and your money within your company. So here's another quote from Michael Gerber, the same person. He says, if your business depends on you, you don't have a business, you have a job. So if you can't step away from your business, you don't own a business, you have a job. And it's the worst job in the world because you're working for a lunatic. Right? I definitely know that's true in my company. I'll work for a lunatic. All right, so you must work on the business as well as in the business if you want a business and not a job. You must work on the business if you want to increase your profit and pay yourself. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to work on the business rather than in the business. Working on the business is the key to transitioning from being a self-employed person to being a business owner. Okay. So we're going to talk about the 8 D's of time management. 4 of those D's are on how to divide your time, and 4 of those D's are on getting things done. Okay. I want to start with a book called Clockwork by a gentleman named Mike Michalowicz. Mike Michalowicz is kind of a revolutionary when it comes to business and running business, because he has changed things dramatically for me as well as for thousands of other business owners when it comes to time management and when it comes to money management, both of these topics. He's a genius when it comes to both of these topics. And he helps you to be able to spend the time that you need to on the business, but still be able to get away. And he helps you to be able to spend the money that you need to in your business, but still be able to save some and pay yourself what you're worth. Okay, so from his book, The Clockwork, we have 4 different D's, and these are the 4 things that he has. He has first is doing, second is deciding, third is delegating, and fourth is designing. These are the 4 different functions of a business owner and the 4 different things that you do within your company. Okay? So doing is simply doing the work. It can be production, it can be admin tasks, it can be doing sales. It's doing. It's the elbow grease part of your business. And this is the part that most entrepreneurs are really good at. It's probably the reason that you started up your own company, because you were really good at doing something. And so you decided to start your own business. Okay? What percent of your time, if you were to go back and do a time study and look at the past 2 weeks, what percent of your time have you spent doing things in your business? Meaning the accounting, the sales, the estimates and takeoffs, actually swinging the hammer and doing the installs. How much of your time, what percent of your time have you spent doing within your business? So the next one is deciding. And deciding is the time you spend making decisions about things. Okay? What to do next, what products to use, what to charge a customer, etc. We all have to make time to make decisions. If we make time to make decisions, then we can do the proper research, we can look into things, we can think it over, and spend some time to really make a good decision. But what percent of your time over the last 2 weeks has been making decisions? Chances are, this is probably where you spend the second most amount of your time. Most entrepreneurs, especially in the construction industry, most entrepreneurs spend time doing, first of all, and deciding, secondly. It's a lot of time spent there. Okay? Now we're going to start looking at one of the things that is not as common. Delegating. Delegating is the time you spend passing projects and assignments on to others and getting them up to speed on the project. This doesn't mean handing it to them and then hovering and making sure that they do it right. If you properly delegate something and give that person the proper tools to be able to manage the project that you're handing over to them, you can leave and not even be present, and the job will still get done. So how much of your time in the last 2 weeks, what percent of your time have you spent delegating? Meaning explaining the projects, making sure that people had all the resources that they need to do the project, making sure they have all the answers they need to do the project, and then walking away from it. What percent of your time have you spent doing that? You know what's great about delegating is that when you delegate a project to somebody and you spend the time to make sure that they have all the questions that they have answered and all the resources they need to be able to do that job, you can delegate again in hardly as much time. Not much time at all. The last is designing. Designing is what Michael Gerber is referring to when he says working on the business. He's talking about the design portion of your company. So this includes things like developing systems and procedures. It includes creating new products or services. It includes coming up with new strategies, etc. So all of these kind of things are what make a company a template that can run without you. So how much of your time in the last 2 weeks have you spent developing strategies, developing systems and processes, all of these kind of things that will help you be able to pass on your company? Or that help you to be able to step away and take a 4-week vacation without worrying about what's going on with your company, right? So now we're going to talk a little bit about the ideal mix of these first 4 Ds. How much of your time do you need to be spending on each of these things? On the doing, on the deciding, on the delegating, on the designing. How much time each week should you spend? So we've asked you questions already about how much time you do spend. So let's now compare that to how much time you should be spending. What is a healthy balance? So the ideal mix here is the 80% of doing, 2% deciding, 8% delegating, and 10% designing. So we still are doing quite a bit, 80% of the time, right? But then the 8% delegating and 10% designing are the things that will free you up with your business. And that's 18% of the time. Almost a fifth of your time you should spend working on your business to help be able to step away from it so that it can run without you. And I know that scares you because I know that nobody does the work as well as you. But there is hope. You really can get to that point. Okay. So I just broke it down here. That means in a 40-hour work week, 32 hours are spent doing. 48 minutes is spent deciding. How much time are you spending now deciding? What percent of your time? I bet it's more than 48 minutes. And that's because you don't spend 3.2 hours delegating each week. And also because you aren't spending 4 hours each week designing. Okay? Those are some goals to shoot for. So there's a book called Getting Things Done by a gentleman named Richard Allen. And he talks about 4Ds, and these are the 4Ds of getting things done. So first we talked about where you should be spending your time. Now we're going to talk about how to spend your time, or what you should be doing for each of those 4 areas, right? For the doing, for the deciding, for the delegating, and for the designing. How should you be spending your time within those 4 areas? Okay. First thing you want to do, according to Richard Allen, is do a brain dump, meaning that you sit down with a pad of paper and you just start writing. You start writing everything that needs to be done within your company, everything that needs to be done. And you just keep writing and writing and writing until you can't think of any more things. And then you write some more and more and more until you can't think of any more. Okay. And that helps you be able to empty your brain. Richard Allen says that our brains are intended to be problem-solving machines. They were never intended to store information. And that when you try to store information, meaning when you are trying to keep in mind how much, or the different tasks that you have to do, you're taking up precious brain capacity to be able to solve problems. And that's why a lot of people get stuck in this rut where they have so much to do, but they're not getting anything done. It's because they don't have the brain capacity to be able to do things, because they're spending all their brain capacity remembering things that need to be done. Okay? So the next set of Ds, the next 4 Ds, include doing, delegating, deferring, and dropping. Okay? All right, so you make your list. Make your long list, everything that's going on in your head. Then you're going to go down and you're going to mark it with one of these 4 Ds. Doing, delegating, dropping, or deferring. Okay? So first, you're going to do some things. If it's a phone call, or a quick email, or something else that only takes a couple of minutes to do it right now, get it crossed off your list. Chances are you have a ton of different people to call and things to follow up on floating around in your head that are taking up precious brain capacity that you could just do in a few minutes and clear out a whole bunch of things. Man, it feels good to cross things off a list. Right? So if it just takes a few minutes to do, get it done. Cross it off the list. Do it now. The next is delegating. If you have an employee or someone you know that can complete the project, delegate it to them. This can include outsourcing things like your bookkeeping and accounting. So chances are, if you're like most contractors, you have your wife doing your books, or your husband doing your books, or you're doing them yourself at night after you're through working. Or you have all this marketing that you are working on yourself so that you can get more customers. Delegate those things. You can delegate by teaching someone on your staff how to do what you need done. Again, giving them all the resources and answering all the questions that they have on being able to do that so that you can properly delegate it, so they have the authority and the ability to be able to get things done. Or hiring a professional and outsourcing. That's why I have a job, because there are people out there that realize their time is better spent working on their company and working with their clients than it is doing their accounting. Okay? So delegating. You go down through your list a second time. Now you've crossed off all the little things that you could do in just a short amount of time. You go down through the list and you mark everything that you can delegate, everything you can pass off. Okay? And then find a time, schedule a time to be able to get those things delegated and get them off your list so you don't have to worry about them. Okay, the third is deferring. Deferring means I'm not going to do it right now, but it is something that I need to do. This is where designing comes in. From earlier, we talked about designing. You've got to defer time to be able to design. You've got to defer time to be able to decide. And you've got to be able to defer time to do different things. Okay? Excuse me. This means getting it on your calendar. So you got to use a calendar for this to defer properly. So you go down through your list, you figure out everything on there that you can defer, and then schedule it right now. Put it in your calendar. Schedule out that time so that you know when you can go do it. And then keep that calendar sacred. Don't let other activities bump those activities. Okay? That's how you get into firefighter mode. In order to stay out of firefighter mode, you have to hold those times sacred that you set up for doing things. Okay? Last one is dropping. If it's just not that important to do, if it goes in the someday I hope to category, then make note of it, make detailed notes if you have to, and file it away somewhere that you can access it. That way you can get it out of your brain. It's stored somewhere. You know that you can go refer to that file anytime. Your brain will release it, and you have more capacity to be able to solve problems and be able to be creative. Okay? If you can learn to live by your calendar, frequently empty your brain, and stick to the method of doing, delegating, deferring, and dropping, you'll stop being a firefighter. That's the key. That's how you get out of that rut. Also, you'll have time to work on the cool things we'll cover next. All right, here's a Dilbert comic. ASOC, this is important, but you have a month to finish it. The guy next to him, who's clearly ASOC, says, I'll start right away. Then the other guy there in the office says, it's smarter to wait until the last minute and then make a big show of how hard you're working to meet the unreasonable deadline. Right? And then the other guy said, you said that right in front of him, meaning the boss. And then he replies, it'll still work. That's the freaky part. So again, Parkinsons Law. You're going to use up all of your resources. If you don't schedule time for doing specific things, you're going to use up all of your time and you won't be able to do those important things like designing, like delegating. You've got to set up time for that. And you've got to hold it sacred. And we're going to find out here shortly, it's the same thing with your money. You've got to schedule your money. If you schedule your money, then you won't have any problems with being able to always have a good paycheck. It's weird how it works. It's just a simple mindset change, but it works. I know, I've done it with hundreds of clients. Okay? So let's go on. Okay. So as far as money management goes, that's what we're talking about now, is money management. We talked earlier on the profit and loss about how the equation for it is income minus expenses equals profit. For this, we want to get that equation out of your mind completely. We're going to throw out the income minus expenses equals profit. Because that means that we bring in some money, we spend as much of it as we can, and then we have a little bit left over. We're going to instead change the way that we're thinking. And this is the new equation. Income minus the profit equals the expenses. See how now all of a sudden profit is a higher priority? By simply making that mindset change and making profit a higher priority, we are now able to take everything that we earn, we pull out what we're going to use for profit, and then all we have left is the expenses. And we're going to spend everything that we have left. But we'll have already pulled the profit out. Okay? Back to the Parkinsons Law. You're going to spend all of the resource that you have available. So if we pull the profit out first, you have less available. I know it's crazy. You're probably thinking to yourself right now, that just doesn't work. But I'm telling you, it does. You're going to have to trust me on that one. Okay? Okay. Money management starts with a challenge. Find those needles in the haystack. I challenge you to cut at least 10% of your expenses. 10%. I had one client once that I brought this up to, and it was a lady, and she laughed at me, and she said, "Man, I am already running so lean. There is no way that I could cut another dime from what I'm spending right now." She went back, she worked hard at the project, did what I asked her to, and she found 17%. 17%. Now you can find that by opening up the profit and loss in your accounting system and going through each expense. You pull it up, you look at the detail for each expense. What am I spending money on that could go? And then you pull up the next line item, then the next line item. I guarantee you guys have more money in eating out, meals and entertainment, than you'd normally want. I guarantee you could cut back on that. Because chances are you just get lazy at times and go to McDonald's or take the crew there. Right? And then it's not just you're paying for the whole crew. Now if you do that and it's planned, that's fine. But if it's just because, hey, we're hungry and we don't have anything to eat because we didn't plan ahead, that's when you get into trouble. Okay? What are you paying for you don't need or use anymore? Gym memberships. This is what I call the gym memberships category. How many subscriptions do you have that you can get rid of because you don't use them anymore? Guys, I am guilty of this as well. I had, I think, 3 different Microsoft Office accounts open at one time. 3. I was paying for the exact same products 3 times over. And I only had to pay for just the one. Okay, so the gym membership category. What am I paying for that I can get rid of? Those monthly subscriptions. What things can you get a better pricing on? If you can buy stuff in bulk, if you have the cash or a line of credit available to do that, chances are you can get bigger breaks, which will save you money. It'll bump you up in that vendor's system to a higher price break category. So think about that. Find the excess and eliminate it. All right, we're going to talk about 4 accounts here. The next step, after you've made all those cuts to how much you're spending, you now have a little bit more to work with, right? Well, now what we can do is we are going to set up 4 different bank accounts. Okay, the current account that you have, your checking account at the bank, is your income account. Okay? Every dime that comes into the company goes into the income account. Then you're going to set up a second account that you're going to call OPEX, or operating expenses. And any time that you are going to pay for things, any expenses, you're going to transfer money from the income account into OPEX, and you're going to pay for all of your expenses through the OPEX account, with one exception that we'll talk about here in a second. Okay? Third, you're going to set up a profit account. Okay? You're going to have a profit account. It can be a savings account because you're not really going to spend out of it, but you want to set up this third account, a profit account. Fourth, you're going to set up a payroll account. This is the one exception for OPEX. You want to be able to cover payroll for sure. And so we're going to transfer money from income into payroll. And we're going to talk about those transfers in a little bit here. Okay? So, every check that you receive, all your income goes into the income account. Everything goes into that. That's the big bucket that catches everything. Okay? And then we're going to sit down and we're going to determine what percentages do we need to be transferring into the operation expenses? What percentages are we transferring into payroll to cover payroll? And what percent we're going to transfer into our profit account. All right? With the profit account, if you're nervous about it and you don't believe that it works yet, just do 1%. Stick with 1%. That's it. Just get in the habit of moving it to the profit account, putting it there, leaving it alone. And we're going to talk about that in a second here too. Okay? This is like the grandma's old envelope system, where you have all the money that comes in, you go to the bank, you cash the check, and then you get the cash and you put a little bit of cash in the grocery budget, a little bit of cash for the rent, a little bit of cash for whatever the other expenses are, clothing, things like that. Okay, that's basically what we're going to do here. We're going to figure out how much money we need to be putting into the payroll account each month to cover our payroll, how much we need to put into operation expenses to cover our operation expenses, and then we're going to figure out a percent to transfer into profit. And we're going to do this twice a month. We're going to make these transfers on the 5th and on the 20th of each month. Okay? All right, discipline. Let's talk a little bit about discipline. With discipline, you want to use accounts only for the designated purposes. OPEX is for operating expenses. Payroll is just for paying payroll. Profit, you leave alone and don't touch. Got to leave it alone. Okay? If you have to take your profit account and move it to another bank. Set up a savings account at another bank and physically take a check over there and deposit it twice a month. Or write out the check and do the mobile deposit. Okay? Don't have checks for that account. You want it to be a savings account. Make the money hard to get to. That'll help you with your discipline. All right? So let's talk for a second about how to figure out percentages. We're going to get into some more detail later on in this series about cash flow and about budgeting. And the budgeting especially will help us be able to figure out how much we need for what. We can go through and figure out some of the cash flows that we have. What are our recurring payments? And we can figure out kind of minimums for that. We can figure out kind of what percent we're going to spend on jobs and figure that and add that to the operation expenses as well. Then we can also do the same thing for payroll. If we look back through our history, we can figure out, okay, well, payroll during these months is usually about this much. That way we know about how much to set aside for payroll. Okay? All right, once a quarter, we're going to use a portion of the profit to celebrate. This is the slide I've been waiting to get to. The amount of activity or purchase can be big or small. Just make sure to celebrate. You're going to do something once a quarter. Go out to eat at a fancy restaurant. Or buy yourself some beef jerky at the gas station. I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to be big. But celebrate. Find something that you really like and go purchase it. Celebrate in some way. Okay? A new rifle, new shotgun. That's what I want. I want a new 12 gauge. Okay? Set up dreams and goals for your profit account and save until you reach your goal and celebrate. So you need to have these small celebrations along the way. That's the only way that you'll maintain the discipline and be able to continue putting that money aside so that you have a profit. But then plan some really big goals. Plan some really big activities. A big vacation or something like that for the family. And then save toward it. And be able to save in that profit account a little bit each month, until eventually you've saved up enough for that big goal. Okay? Woohoo! There's a bunch of guys celebrating. All right, let's go back over time management really quickly. Okay. First, you're going to divide up your time. You got to spend some time doing, and you want that to be about 80% of your time. You're going to spend some time deciding, and that's going to be about 2% of your time. Delegating, about 8%, and designing, about 10%. So again, it's very, very important that you spend time doing those last two activities, the delegating and the designing. You're already doing a lot. You're already deciding a lot. But you've got to get to those last two activities. That's the only way to get out of that firefighter mode and to get to become a business owner rather than self-employed and just a worker for your own business. Okay? So if you want to be able to take that 4-week vacation, if you want to be able to take time off to go to your kids' plays or sporting events or things like that, you've got to get into those last two items there, the delegating and designing. Okay, when you do, you'll be able to create something that can run on its own. and doesn't need you. That way you can sit back and collect the profit, like we just talked about, without having to spend all the time in your business because you worked on your business, right? So then we talked about getting things done in those 4 Ds. Step number 1 is to empty your brain on paper. Don't store all the items that you need to do up in your brain. If you get them out of your head and get them down on paper, you free your brain up to be creative and to problem solve. Okay? After you do that, you're going to go down through your list and you're going to mark each of those items. You're going to mark them as something that you can do right now and then go do it, because it only takes 3 minutes or less. You're going to delegate things, figure out which items you can delegate, whether by passing it off to somebody within your company or passing it off to another professional to get things done for you. You're going to defer by putting it on the calendar to do at a later date, whether it's tomorrow or later today or whatever. And then figure out which things you can drop. And you're going to go through your whole list and you're going to mark every item on your list with one of those 4 things. And then carry it out. So, profit management. Again, we've changed the equation a little bit. Income minus profit equals expenses. That way we've prioritized profit. We're taking profit out first, then we're paying our expenses with what's left. That's just a mindset shift that you've got to make if you want to be able to build up some profit in your company. First step we do is that needle in a haystack. Go through, find those things you can cut. Find what you can cut. Next, you're going to set up the bank accounts. You need income, operating expenses, profit, and payroll. Those are the 4 basic ones. And you can set up other accounts if you have other things that you need to delegate money to each month, other envelopes you need in that system. But those are the 4 basic accounts to use. Income, operating expense, profit, and payroll. Okay? And then you're going to figure out how much money needs to go into each one of those items. Once you've figured out how much money needs to go into each one of those accounts each month, you're going to do it on the 5th and the 20th. You're going to pay your bills on the 5th and the 20th, twice a month. Everybody has to wait until the 5th and the 20th to get paid, except for your employees, which is a little bit different. You got to meet payroll based on however often you do payroll. But everybody else gets paid on the 5th or the 20th, and you make them wait. And you get really disciplined about that, which is the next one, discipline. You got to be very disciplined about this whole system. You got to be able to dedicate money to certain categories and then not move it back and not move it around. Set up your profit account at a different bank if you have to, if that helps you be disciplined. Last thing is celebrate. Got to make sure to take money out and celebrate. Once a quarter, go do something fancy for yourself with the profit account. Or for a spouse, or for a child, or a significant other, family member, whatever. But take some money out, celebrate. And then save for big things so you can have a big celebration. Okay? As before, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. My name is Jeremy Lott. I'm with Foundation Accounting and Consulting. My phone number is 801-440-5885. 801-440-4540. Again, that's 801-440-4540. You can call or text me there. My email address is jeremy@foundationacs.com. That stands for Foundation Accounting Consulting Services.com. And my website is foundationacs.com. So if you have any questions about what we've talked about or any other accounting questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll talk to you soon.